Here's an update on some recent lesson topics. Hi there, welcome to Plain English, lesson number 365. I'm Jeff. JR is the producer, and this full lesson can be found at plainenglish.com/365. You know, JR pointed out today that this means there's one plain English lesson for every day of the year. So you could listen to a new lesson every single day for a year and never run out of new English material. I like that. Well, today we take a walk down memory lane and we revisit several lessons we've talked about in the past. I'll give you the very latest on 8 lessons. And like always, we have an English expression to talk about, and JR has a song of the week. Let's get going. We start in Minneapolis, where George Floyd was killed by police during an arrest last May. We talked about it in lesson 267. A video showed a police officer, Derek Chauvin, kneeling on George Floyd's neck for over 8 minutes as bystanders pleaded for him to stop. Floyd died at the scene. Derek Chauvin was found guilty of all 3 charges against him, including murder charges. During the trial, prosecutors argued that the officer's actions went against police training and would not be considered justified. Prosecutors said Floyd was treated with extreme cruelty and that Chauvin abused his position of authority. They called 38 witnesses, including several bystanders, police trainers, and experts on crisis management. The defense called 7 witnesses and presented its case in just 2 days. They argued that the officer's use of force was necessary and that Floyd died from causes other than the officer's actions. The defense suggested the cause of death could have been a pre-existing heart condition or even carbon monoxide poisoning from the exhaust of a parked vehicle. The trial lasted over a month. After closing arguments were complete, the jury deliberated for 10 hours before returning a guilty verdict on all 3 charges. Over 20 million people watched the verdict on live television. The officer faces up to 40 years in prison. Volkswagen announced that an all-electric passenger van will go on sale as soon as next year. You first heard about it back in lesson 89 when it was first announced. The German carmaker confirmed that a production version would be ready for Europe in 2022 and the US in 2023. Its design resembles the classic microbus model from the 1950s through the 1970s. Like the original, this new version has a low, boxy shape and is long enough for 3 rows of seats. But this version will be all electric with a sleek design, tons of electronics inside, and a rectangular steering wheel. It will be available as a cargo van and a luxury passenger van in Europe. The US market will get the passenger version only. The Tokyo 2020 Olympics will go on in 2021. We talked about the decision to postpone the Olympics in lesson 250. The countdown timer in downtown Tokyo was frozen, and volunteers had to cancel their plans to travel to Tokyo. Athletes' schedules were interrupted. But the games will go on, and Japan will be welcoming spectators to events this summer. Athletes will need negative COVID tests before entering the country, and they will be tested at intervals. The time athletes stay in the Olympic Village has also been reduced. Athletes will not be required to have a vaccine to participate. Spectators from outside Japan will not be allowed to enter the country to attend any events, so the fans in attendance will all be locals. Japan has lagged in delivery of the coronavirus vaccine. Most people aren't expected to receive their doses until late summer. Only a tiny fraction of the population has been vaccinated so far. A recent poll showed about 3/4 of Japanese residents supported postponing or canceling the Olympics, but the organizing committee is holding firm. The Olympics are scheduled to open on July 23rd. After its disastrous first attempt at an initial public offering, the co-working firm WeWork is trying again. You might remember from lesson 203 in October 2019 that potential investors balked when they saw WeWork's required financial disclosures the first time around. When a private company wants to become public and sell shares on the stock market, it goes through an initial public offering. In the U.S., that means disclosing lots of financial metrics that had previously been private. When outside investors first saw this information, they realized WeWork was not as strong as its CEO had claimed and as the press had described. The whole process collapsed in a humiliating episode. The company sacked its CEO and was rescued by a large investor. But now WeWork is back. After installing a completely new management team, changing the culture, and stabilizing its operations, WeWork is ready to try its hand at being a public company again. But this time, it's going to go public through a SPAC acquisition. SPAC is short for Special Purpose Acquisition Company. A SPAC is a public company that has no operations. It's traded on the stock exchange but has no underlying business. Its whole purpose is to buy a private business later. This lets a private business like WeWork become a public company without having to go through the expensive and rigorous process of an initial public offering. Things could still go south. The company still has to disclose financial forecasts, just not in as much detail as before. In lesson 208, we talked about ghost kitchens. Those are commercial spaces where restaurateurs can prepare meals for delivery only without ever having a sit-down restaurant. Ghost kitchens have increased in popularity in the post-COVID world as food delivery has been in high demand. In lesson 141, we talked about Alex Trebek, the host of the quiz show Jeopardy! He died in November 2020, and now the producers are inviting a long list of guest hosts to audition to become the show's permanent hosts. Guests to date include journalists Katie Couric, Anderson Cooper, and Bill Whitaker. Other guest hosts include Dr. Oz, a television doctor and talk show host, Ken Jennings, a popular former contestant, and Aaron Rodgers, the quarterback for the Green Bay Packers football team. You learned about space junk in Lesson 303. A giant piece of a former satellite was hurtling out of control, and nobody knew where it would crash. Scientists said it could be as far north as New York and as far south as Wellington, New Zealand, and it weighed several tons. In the end, it crashed in the Indian Ocean and didn't cause any damage. It was the heaviest object to fall from space in 30 years. Nomadland, which we talked about in Lesson 346 and 347, won Best Picture at this year's Academy Awards. Frances McDormand won the award for Best Actress. And on a personal note, I promised you in Lesson 326 that I would let you know about my personal experience with password managers. In the lesson, I made a pretty convincing case that password managers are the way to keep track of all your login details. I switched to LastPass in December, and it has been a success so far. My only problem is that I've probably only committed myself 75% to the password manager. But for this to be successful, you need to go all in. I still have addresses and credit cards in the browser. I just haven't moved it all over. So that's my advice. If you do a password manager, go all in. Do it 100%, but it is worth it in my experience so far. Today's expression is to hold firm. When you hold firm on a decision, you refuse to change your mind about something even when you might have a good reason to. Earlier in today's lesson, you heard that the organizers of Tokyo's Olympic Games are holding firm on their decision to hold the Olympics this year. They have made the decision to go ahead with the Olympics. A majority, in fact, a substantial majority of people in Japan think the Olympics should be canceled or postponed again. Japan's public health agency is advising against the events, but the committee is holding firm, even though there's pressure to reverse the decision, and even though a lot of people disagree with the decision, the committee is not changing their decision. They are holding firm. Holding firm can make compromise difficult. If two sides enter a negotiation, and if both sides hold firm on their demands, then there isn't much room for compromise. I just saw a public opinion poll saying that large majorities of people in the U.S. want the two political parties to compromise and work together. Sounds great, and I'm glad the poll results show that. But I think people's opinions change when there's a specific issue on the table. When there's a specific issue being debated, many people want their representatives to hold firm and not compromise with the other side. People like the idea of compromise when speaking in general terms, but on specific proposals, they like their side to hold firm and not give in to the other side. This is for the parents out there. Have you ever said no to your kids only to have them cry and scream in public. I'm not a parent, so I've never faced this dilemma. It's easy for me to say the parents need to hold firm and not change their decisions just because kids are crying and making a scene. But I don't think I would ever know for sure what I would do if I'm not in that position. You remember from last week that the European football clubs that wanted to start a super league did not hold firm. That was pretty much the opposite of holding firm. They backed down. They changed their decision pretty quickly after public opinion went against them. I've mentioned on a few previous lessons that big movie studios have postponed the theatrical releases of their big movies. Nobody wanted to release a big movie into a pandemic, but studios reworked their schedules and they are now holding firm on their planned release dates. They are keeping their word and releasing movies on time. Warner Brothers released Godzilla vs. Kong, for example, and its animated film Tom and Jerry on time. They might have postponed the movie release dates again, but they held firm. They didn't change the dates, and Godzilla vs. Kong was the highest grossing non-Chinese movie of the year. Today's song of the week is Flightless Bird, American Mouth by the band Iron and Wine. The song was featured in the movie Twilight from 2008. I read the lyrics twice, and I have no idea what they mean. So this is a song to listen to, enjoy the melody, try to pick out words you like, but my advice is don't spend too much time figuring it out or trying to understand a deeper meaning. Flightless Bird, American Mouth is JR's song of the week. And that's all for today's lesson. I hope you enjoyed this update lesson. So how many of the 8 lessons do you remember listening to the first time around? We had the VW bus, Nomadland, Space Junk, George Floyd, WeWork, the Japan Olympics, Alex Trebek, ghost kitchens, and password managers. We cover a lot of ground, and some of those lessons go back years. Well, if you ever find yourself with a few extra minutes, then check out a Plain English lesson from the archives. Remember, there's one for every day of the year. Any member of Plain English on a free or paid plan has access to the lesson library. You just sign in and find libraries at the top of the page and choose lessons. From there, you can filter and search all our old lessons, going back to lesson number 1 if you want. It's easy to browse by topic and find something good to listen to in English. Arts, politics, sports, travel, science, the environment, health, whatever your interests, I bet we have some old lessons on it. If you're not a member yet, go ahead and do that at plainenglish.com. You'll find a lot of great old lessons there. They get better with age. And that's all for today. We'll be back again with a new lesson, new topic on Monday. See you then.